Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I'm going to talk about some small 9mm concealed carry guns. Some of them are single stack, the classic all in a line, 6 to 7 round capacity, and some of them are the new stack and a half thing, where it's not quite a double stack, but it's bigger than a single stack, and you tend to get 10 plus rounds, and this is right from the factory. In the prior days, your choices were limited when it came to concealed carry. One of the most popular ones was something like this Glock 26, which is chambered in 9mm, and it's thick, it's heavy, it weighs about 22 ounces, 21 and a half, 22 ounces. It holds 10 rounds in its flush mount factory magazine, and Glock, of course, you could always put bigger Glock magazines in it, but they just stuck out. So this was probably one of the more popular options for concealed carry, but it was kind of limited in deep conceal. So you could, if you wanted to, go to something like the Kel-Tec P3AT, which was small, had a horrible long double action trigger, or something like the Ruger LC9 that came out a little bit later. Same thing, it was lighter, but it had just a hideous long double action trigger. They've since improved that. They have the S version of the LC9 that's got a decent trigger. But what I got on the table here is some entries into the market in, let's say, the past 5 years or so. Some of these very recent, like the Hellcat over here, and some have been around a little bit longer, things like this 938. But they've kind of upped the ante when it comes to concealed carry. One of the ones that came out not long after, let's say, the LC9 and the Kel-Tec is this Kahr. This is a PM9. They also have a CW9 that has a few fewer features. These became relatively popular because they're thin, they're relatively light. This one comes in at 17 ounces. They're available with night sights, things like that. And by the way, every one of the guns that I'm going to show you today, we have double cleared. Hammer and I have cleared them. This was probably one of the most popular options available, but they were in the $700 range. They had very vague, very hard to pull slides, real high quality, but they upped the game on the trigger. They're still a double action trigger, but they're smooth and relatively light, which was a big step up of the Kel-Tecs and the LC9 at the time, but they're expensive. And they are a little bit difficult to take down. They're a little temperamental. So the question is something like this actually still relevant? Because there's others on the table here that may have taken over its slot in the world. One of the competitors of it doesn't necessarily oust it, it's just a different design. This is a 1911 style design. This is the 6-hour P938, and this comes in a number of different flavors. This particular one I think is the Nightmare, and it's not available anymore. They're on to different styles and designs, but it's all the same basic gun. This particular one came with factory night sights. The Kahrs also were available with factory night sights, and this one, similar to the Kahr, has a steel magazine and it holds 6 rounds. The Kahr actually does have a 7-round magazine, a factory magazine available, but this appeals to somebody who's used to a 1911 and likes the cocked and locked style. And they really are a nice looking gun, real easy to operate slide, and of course you've got that really short single action 1911 trigger and the thumb safety you come to be used to on a 1911. But these are SIGs, and they're SIGs metal guns, and SIG is really proud of their metal guns. These would go anywhere between the 6s up over 1,000 depending on which fancy flavor of it you got. The more stylish the gun was, the higher the price went. But these were available in that time frame and still are available. These don't necessarily, again, oust the Kahr or some of the others, but this is a big step up from, let's say, the LC9 or the Kel-Tec in terms of trigger ergonomics and overall design and function of the gun. Then, of course, comes along Glock. Not to say Glock's the greatest, the best, or whatever, but Glock has a habit of stirring things up. They came out with the 42, which was a 380. And then they came out with the 43, which is a 9mm. This 43 holds 6 rounds as well in a flush fit Glock magazine, and has the same basic trigger as all the other Glocks, and it's a striker fired gun. That way, if you've got a Glock 43, you've got a Glock 26, you've got a Glock 17, it's all basically the same trigger. And this might be the first of the concept of a stack and a half, where they're kind of staggered a little bit. They're not in a single line. This does hold limited capacity, but notice how short the grip is. And the gun is light. The gun comes in at 18 ounces. And it's got an MSRP of about $529, but these are commonly available in the fours. And that's, of course, before everything got crazy and people started buying up anything that went bang. Most of them have the Glock U-Dot sights. Some of them came with Glock night sights. But like happens a lot with Glock, they'll stir things up. They'll come out with something that kind of rattles the world. And this was a major leap forward in that type of firearm. And then, of course, the other manufacturers catch up with them and in many cases surpass them. An example of that, if I find the right one, is this Diamondback DB9. This Diamondback DB9 has the same capacity as the Glock. It's got a 6-round factory magazine. The DB9 is half the price of the Glock. It's 13.4 ounces, and the original generation had that hideous long heavy trigger, but this one, I'm going to put the magazine back out. This one has a very nice light short striker fired trigger. So Diamondback kind of upped the game and took over what the Glock 43 could do. It's a lighter gun, it's a little bit smaller gun, equally nice trigger, and same capacity at half the price. You know, unless you don't like Diamondback for some reason, this is something that you might seriously consider. So I'm going to put the magazine back in, and ignoring the pinky extender, you can see where it's smaller than the Glock in every dimension. It's shorter than the Glock again if you had the flush mount magazine on it. It's just a hair shorter than the Glock with the same capacity, and it's much thinner than the Glock. And you can see the tail end of the 3-dot sights, so it does have nice sights. The factory sights are quite nice. So now you're in the $250-some territory with an easy to operate slide, same capacity, and a nice trigger. And a lot of these modern guns, and I kind of overlooked this on several of the ones I showed you, they're easier to take down. They're more of the Glock style, Springfield, Walther style. You either pull down on levers or flip an arm, and you're much more easily able to take them down. The Kahr can be a bit of fun to take down, trying to line everything up and work with the slide. So kind of the game starts to change when you start looking at guns like this in that price range with the features that normally are costing several $100s more. Then Sig decided to stir things up. Sig released the P365. Move the Glock out of the way. 365 holds 10 rounds in its flush mount magazine. It is the stack and a half concept fully executed, because if you look at the grip, bring this Glock back that I kind of kicked to the side, it's only a hair thicker than the Glock. The slide's actually probably about the same size. The grip's just a hair thicker, but it's 4 or 5 rounds more capacity, actually 4 rounds more capacity than the Glock. And it has a very nice, short, crisp, striker-fired trigger. So gone are the heavy, long, double-action only triggers. This particular one comes with factory night sights. They're available in a couple different flavors, and Sig has now got an XL version of this. It's a little bit bigger, but that kind of defeats the purpose in this particular video of small, light guns. The P365 is 16 ounces. By the way, I misspoke. This one is 18.5 ounces. It's not 16 ounces. But it holds 10, 12, and 15 in the factory magazines. Now I know some of these aftermarket magazines will come out that'll extend the capacity some. What I'm talking about today is just what you can buy from the manufacturer, take it right out of the box and use it as is without having to make any changes. You might put a Talon grip or something like that on it, but otherwise the gun or the magazines that I'm going to talk about work right out of the box ready to go. This changed the game. They had some initial problems with the first versions of these with some sight screws backing out and a few other things. Sig got all over that, got it taken care of. You can see there's the Picatinny rail now. And the Picatinny rail is a rare occurrence previously on this category of gun. Most all of them had no type of a rail. You would have trigger mount lasers if you wanted to have a laser, but your options were relatively limited. But Sig comes with it's a nice size rail. Now unfortunately it's Sig's proprietary style, so some of the Picatinny things won't work on it because it doesn't have the notch. So with a Sig you're stuck with Sig accessories, but there are quite a few of them, and of course like Glock, the aftermarket rapidly takes after Sig and starts making things that work with their stuff, just like the aftermarket took off with the Glocks and made lasers and lights to put on their trigger guards. So overall, this was kind of a game changer. Really stepped it up in what you can get in a very small, light, two-finger grip gun that you can put in a pocket. And these are good for ankle guns, appendix carrier where you don't want some great big long barrel. The options now are much better. Now you've got something like the Mossberg MC1. Now, Mossberg re-entered the pistol, the handheld handgun pistols. You know, they've got some shotguns that are legally classified as a pistol, but they're still large guns. Actual small compact guns like this. They came out with this MC1. And this has a 6 and 7 round capacity. This pretty much competes directly with the Glock 43. If I bring the Glock around, put in the flush mount magazines, you've got a gun that's almost the identical size of the Glock 43, including thickness. Nice 3-dot sights. So you might think, okay, so what's the big deal with this? Well, this is in the 400s, the MC1, and the Glock 43 is in the 500s, so it's a less expensive gun. And they've got some cool features to take down. You lock it back, you push a button here, and the striker comes out. Does two things. One, you're not pulling the trigger during the disassembly, and two, it makes it really easy to clean the striker channel. So Mossberg has actually come kind of doing a good job, and these have been actually quite reliable. They've got nice triggers from the factory, flatty trigger, striker fired, nice crisp break. So you've got now a lot of options in this basic size territory. Then of course Springfield right now, who's, if you want to use capacity versus size as the measure, the Hellcat is sitting at the top of the heap. One more round than the P365, so you've got your small mag is 11 and the extended mag is 13. They're in the 500s territory. They come with these U-dot sights, and the front sight's a night sight and the rear sight is a regular sight, and they are, you can get various grips to handle it, and various Talon and other grips are available for them. They just wrap around. They're just stickers basically, but they make some of these guns a little easier to hold on to. So let me put this down and talk about the next part of this. Now, one of the things to consider when you're looking at them, and there's lots of different choices out here, is some of the features you're seeing in the modern larger handguns are non-existent in this particular territory. Things such as replaceable back straps, wraparound modifications, grips that you can do right from the factory. Most of these are small, they're thin, and the grip is what the grip is. Some of them may not just fit well in your hand. For example, the PM9 is an example. I have a little more trouble shooting this well. It's a combination of the way it fits in my hand, where it sits in my hand, the trigger itself, even though it's a decent trigger relative to everything else. I have a little more trouble shooting this well. The Hellcat, on the other hand, I can pick this thing up and waste most of the target because I'm busy on the bullseye. Possibly the sights, the grips, just the way it fits in my hand. This Mossberg also seems to fit quite well in my hand. Now, all of these are 2-finger grips, so it's not the length of the grip that's making a difference. It's just how it fits in your hand with a gun this small. You may find, for example, this one is a beautiful gun. It's got a wonderful trigger. Just the way it sits in my hand, I have to work harder to shoot this one well. I think the gun is actually capable of perfect accuracy. If I clamp all these things in a vise, I'm sure you would get the same accuracy out of the hardware. But in your hand, may be a little bit different. So when you're in this size category of gun, kind of holds true for all guns, but it's even more of a significance with this size category, is you're going to have to handle them. Find a friend that's got one. Go to a gun store, handle them. Go to a range that you can rent one. Make sure that that particular gun, regardless of its potential accuracy, you're able to shoot it well. Especially right now with ammo prices being ridiculous and through the roof, it's not like you want to spend 200 rounds finding out that this particular gun isn't for you, because at that point, if nothing else, you've got a used gun that you can't really comfortably carry. But they're all good. All of these on the table have been reliable. One note I'll make on the Kahr: the Kahrs do tend to have a break-in period. So about the first 50 rounds, this thing's just not going to run good. Know that once you get past that, a few cleanings, they'll run flawlessly forever after that. These are fairly durable, but initially out of the box, they tend to be temperamental. The rest of these on the table have pretty much worked from round one and have worked ever since. Every gun can malfunction if you get some bad ammo, but reliability perspective, right out of the box, most of these have worked quite well. The break-in period with the Kahrs is pretty consistent. Every Kahr we've ever gotten has that 50 to 100 round break-in period, and then once you get past that, you're good to go. So, know that you're going to have a little bit of rounds in it, sometimes a little bit more, but it's basically you're going to have to put some ammo through it and put up with some malfunctions in the beginning to get past that. And that's one of the things. In the early days of to get a gun this small, you just had to deal with that. That was part of life in a gun this small. Now, you can get things like this. This DB9 is an inexpensive gun for the P365. Actually, I picked up the MC1. They just work. Now, if I had to pick one that I personally would carry, I probably would choose the Glock 43 simply because it is consistent with all my other Glocks. So it's the same as the Glock 26, same trigger, Glock 29, consistency. So that when I pick this up, it's going to operate the same. That doesn't mean it's the best gun on the table. As a matter of fact, if I were going to go on a range day, I'd take the Hellcat. Hellcat's just nicer to shoot than the Glock 43. It's got really nice sights. It fits comfortable in my hand. It's just easy to operate. And I can actually shoot it a hair better than the Glock. The key to the difference between what I would pick to carry is that consistency and what I would pick for a range day, the Hellcat. Now, if I didn't have Glocks, the consistency across the platform of small to large was not a concern. The Hellcat would be hands down the one I would pick. Capacity, function, reliability, it's all right there. Hopefully this is kind of helpful, gives you a little bit of information towards this particular category of guns. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, kind of all over the place. And thank you.